Hello, everyone. So I will be blessedly brief and just give you a little bit of background, a little bit of plans for New Frontiers 5, and some thoughts on decadal survey. So I think everybody's aware of what the New Frontiers program is. This program compromises the largest, most complex PI-led missions that SMD does. As Kali mentioned in her talk, this program was originated 15 years ago or so. It was an incredible coup for planetary science that we were able to begin this program. And I'd just like to reiterate what she said, that the ability to begin missions of this size and complexity without having to go through the congressional and budget and OMB process is an incredible benefit to the planetary science community. And I say that as also the program scientist for Europa Clipper with firsthand knowledge of the hoops we've had to jump through to get Europa Clipper on the path to the launching pad. So New Frontiers is an incredible opportunity for us. We have 3 missions going right now. New Horizons, which went by Pluto a few years ago. You might have seen a news article or two about that. Juno, which is at Jupiter right now. You may also have seen that in the news and in the journal publications. And OSIRIS-REx, which I assure you will be hearing much about this summer when we start beginning our attempts to grab a sample from the surface and bring it back to Earth. Earlier this summer, in late June, as a matter of fact, we finished the competition for New Frontiers 4, which was a very intense competition. We received 12 proposals in total. And at the end of that effort, we selected Dragonfly, which is a multi-rotor drone that will fly around and explore Titan, eventually finishing its mission at Selk Crater. So New Frontiers 5, which I think is probably of most interest to everybody here. This is a draft schedule for New Frontiers 5, and I'm sure you all remember that the last decadal survey recommended that we have 2 New Frontiers opportunities in the 2013 to 2022 decade that it covered. You can see here we're going to be able to just squeeze the AO into that period. The final AO will go out October 2022, but I have put the draft AO release quite a bit earlier than we usually have for these competitions, and I'll get to why that is in a second. But finally AO in October of 2022, that's pretty much a no later than date. Part of the benefit of releasing the draft AO that early is that if we can, if the budget and other things support it, we can accelerate the release of the release of the final AO. Step 1 down select about a year, well, about 9 months later, I should say. And the step 2 down select in August of 2024. And the launch readiness date will be, we haven't made that decision yet, but it's usually about 5 years after the final down select. But that's flexible, which brings me to this point. The New Frontiers 5 AO is not written yet. Although, as I mentioned, New Frontiers 4, the selection was announced in late June of this year. By the second week of August, I began getting questions about New Frontiers 5. And the first question, well, the second question I got was, why don't you know? Haven't you started working on this yet?
What have you been doing?
Exactly. And the answer was napping. It was a very tense spring. But for me, there are 2 near-term goals for New Frontiers 5, which I've put up here. First is to have greater collaboration with the planetary science community as we craft that AO. I think all too often we think that AOs are fixed, rigid, legal boilerplate, they can't be changed. That's not true. AOs are quite flexible. We usually try not to use that flexibility because we want to avoid surprises to the proposers, because the decisions we make as we exercise that flexibility can have significant impacts on the mission concepts and the proposals you're writing. So in order to utilize that flexibility, the key is start early. And that is the plan for New Frontiers 5, to start early. So increase collaboration with the community and communicating those major AO policies to you, the proposers, as soon as possible, because some of them have significant impacts. Now, I'm not talking about whether or not The page limit for the science technical section is 15 or 16 pages. I'm talking about things like, what's the cost cap? What's the launch readiness date? What's the reserve policy? These are all things that dramatically influence whether or not your mission concept even fits within the box. So you need to know those things as soon as possible. So the plan there is, as I already mentioned, to use that time to increase the flexibility so that we can craft an AO that first of all enables you to propose what you think is great science and great mission concepts, and also gives you the opportunity to have a voice in crafting those policies. That means that we can tweak things more than we have in the past, and I am very open to that, with the caveat that I don't decide the final version of the AO. And the way the process works at headquarters, which I think most people don't know, is I sit down with my boss, Lori, and I have to convince her that these 2 dozen policies are a good idea. Then we go to the Science Management Council in SMD, which is chaired by Thomas. And we convince Thomas, his senior management, and all the other division directors that these are good ideas. And then I start writing the AO. And then that final AO goes back to the SMAC for their final approval as well. So it's a drawn out process, which is why we need to start early. And the other reason I mention this is because I'm open to inviting input. But what you see I've written here is that the kind of input I want is short white papers. It is not helpful to send me an email with 2 or 3 sentences in it saying, I think that you should make the reserve policy 5%, not 25%. I think that a mission to my favorite place should be added to the list. It's great that you think those, and I welcome your participation, but it is very difficult for me to convince Lori and Thomas and the others to make major changes based upon a 2-sentence long email that you sent me. So if you're looking for a change to this AO, I welcome it, but I want you to put some thought into it. I'm not asking for a 20-page white paper. I'm asking for a couple of pages. Actually craft an argument. I think the following would be a good idea. Here's why. Here's my rationale. Here's some data if you can crack open some data as well. I've spent the summer going through every AO and every review we've done since 2003 to gather the data I'm going to need for some of the things that I think need to be adjusted. So I welcome your input on that, but please do more than send me a couple sentences saying, please add my favorite policy to the list. What I'd also like to do is definitely have a town hall meeting at LPSC, although I imagine it's going to be a very crowded week with Decadal right around the corner. So in addition to that, if there's interest, I'm happy to do short town halls at ag meetings over the next 6 to 9 months as well, because the key here, as I said, is to give you an opportunity to provide input. And I'm very happy to work with you to give you an idea of what's realistic, what's not realistic, and what you might need to provide in order to convince NASA to implement whatever policy you think would be beneficial. And I am quite aware that you are going to be looking to craft things such that your favorite mission will fit. Please don't convince yourself that you should not participate in this because you're looking out for yourself. As I explained to somebody a couple months ago, we're sort of used to that at NASA headquarters. It's pretty much commonplace when somebody's talking to one of us, it's because they want something. That's not a bad thing. That's why we're here, to try to give you all what you want. The challenge is in figuring out how to go about doing that in a fair and realistic way. So that's everything I have on New Frontiers 5. Here are the thoughts from the New Frontiers program on the next decadal. It's up to you guys. The New Frontiers program and headquarters don't have any role in the next decadal other than the charter and the funding. The rest of it is all up to you. That's an amazing opportunity you're being given, and I hope you make the most of it. Thanks.
Hi, Bob Grimm, Southwest Research. I am very distressed by what I just heard. This is the first time that I've heard an open call for new mission concepts to replace those that are in the decadal survey.
That's not what I said.
You said, please send me your ideas about other mission concepts.
I said about policies.
No, you also said mission concepts. Okay. You said that 2 or 3 times. That's why I'm standing here.
As an example.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So I just, I'm not advocating this either way. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the decadal survey process for New Frontier selections is broken and has always been broken. Because New Horizons was grandfathered back in as retroactively as the first New Frontiers. Cyrus Rex came out of the midterm correction of a small group of people, which, more or less is on target. And then same thing with Dragonfly got put in through midterm lobbying. So now what was supposed to be the decadal midterm correction or supplement that allowed Dragonfly, now you're advocating another process that's just NASA, that's to change the New Frontiers, again. So if this is the way it is,
no, thank you.
It's just, why are we doing New Frontiers decadal calls?
Let me clarify then, because I spoke inaccurately. When I said mission concepts or whatever, I said that for 2 reasons. 1, it's an example of a policy. 2, because I can't control what you guys send me. If people want to send me stuff about that, that's fine. Lori and I are working on a process that we will use to determine the mission list for New Frontiers 5. It's not ready, or at least as of last Thursday, we weren't ready to debut it yet. But as soon as we get that letter signed off on, we can share that with you. But so let me be clear. I'm not saying that we're going to change the mission list at all. I'm open to changing policies. Well, NASA makes whatever decisions it thinks are best. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, Louise.
Okay, so I sort of had a similar question, maybe slightly gentler approach than Bob, but anyway, maybe not. Okay, so in New Frontiers 3, there were 7 missions, of course, 2 lunar missions of interest to this community. New Frontiers 4, Titan and Enceladus were added, and of course, Titan subsequently won. So I know, so there's kind of 2 parts of this. So one question is, I know OPAG are very keen to know whether Ocean Worlds will still be in the New Frontiers 5 call. And also there are calls from the community, for example, the NASA PAC, to open up New Frontiers completely. So question for you, looking at your timeline, is I guess at this point you probably don't know or won't say whether Ocean Worlds are going to be included, but when will that decision be made? Because that does affect how people prepare for the next New Frontiers 5. Yeah,
that's probably the biggest policy decision that we can make. And right now it depends on the timeline for the process that we want to put in place for giving us the strongest input on what that mission list should be. It's not going to be before Christmas, I can tell you that. Of this year, yes. I expect it will definitely be before the end of calendar year 20. What year are we in? Yeah, 20. Say what? Lori suggests June of 2020 as a target.
Clive Neal, Notre Dame. Question about government furnished equipment with the next New Frontiers call. One of the big issues of getting good science is having enough power to make the observations over a period of time and getting the data back. Are you giving thought to GFEs for power supplies that would enable better science?
Are you referring to RPSs?
I'm referring to whatever is out there that could be used, whether it be RPSs, RTGs, new solar technology.
Usually any GFE we offer is just that government furnished equipment, meaning that the government develops and right. supplies it. I don't really know of any government developed power technologies other than radioisotope power systems.
Right.
So for RPSs, I think that there are missions that are integral to that, and we've developed the plutonium capability. We have the MMRTG assembly line going, and we should continue taking advantage of that. Mm-hmm. The only decision we need to make is what's the mission pull in other directions as well to make sure right. that units will be available.
Right.
So my attitude is, as long as the units are available, we should use them.
Right.
I don't really consider those GFE since the proposers have to pay for them. But yeah, I think it makes sense to offer them.
Okay, thank you.
But let me stress, we haven't made any of these decisions yet.
Hi, Kurt. Your comments stimulated some thoughts that haven't been discussed yet. So let me start the question with you, but this is clearly for Lori, and if Colleen was still here, for Colleen. We have a wide-ranging toolbox of things to consider for science and exploration. We have everything from CLIPS to Simplex to Discovery to New Frontiers to the larger missions, the what they're called. Yeah, flagship missions. And understanding that the decadal really has to focus on the science priorities for the New Frontiers and the decadal. No one's mentioned the decadal yet. I mean, no one's mentioned the flagships yet. And we know from the last decadal that this focused on Mars sample return and Europa, and those were strong. Both of those are progressing very well. There's been a lot of accomplishments there. But then what? Clearly, I think a lot of the people in this room are thinking of big things that need to and could be done at the moon, but it doesn't seem to be on the table. So
you go ahead.
Thanks, Carly. And there's certainly not an intent for that to not be on the table. If you're not hearing that coming through, then the messaging needs to be improved, because absolutely flagships are on the table. The planetary mission concept studies include flagship concepts and the ability for flagships, and the white paper process also is encouraging flagship concepts to come through. The decadal process will, of course, look at all of the different ideas that come in for opportunities to invest in flagship concepts for the next decade. And the decadal process will prioritize the science of those different concepts to identify which ones will be recommended as part of the decadal survey. So that is very definitely a part of the picture. So I don't know where the messaging is going awry if that's not coming through. And the moon's part of that, right? There should be concepts for a variety of different places across the solar system, including the moon.
Can I follow up? While you're here, don't go away. Okay. Of course, with the flagships that are in motion, the Mars sample return and Europa, those aren't done yet. Is there going to be room for other flagships?
I think there should be room for other flagships. If we continue on the path we are, even not with an increase, but with a sustained budget level that we have, I think there is room for at least one, if not two, depending on the size of the flagships in the coming decade. That's always subject to the funding that we get, right? And the intent will, just as we did last time, will be that once the decadal kicks off, we'll provide at least our very best estimate that we can come up with at that moment of what that funding is expected to look like over the coming years. But again, it's beyond a funding horizon, so it's always a guess. But my hope is that there is. I think there should be.
Brett Denevi, APL. I just wanted to make sure you were aware, Kurt, and then people hear what our LEAG position was in terms of the New Frontiers target list. And the kind of community input that we got and then provided to CAPS was that we were in favor of keeping the target list closed. There has been this kind of, motion to just open it wide up. And our feeling in LEAG was that there's a strategy involved, a strategic priorities that are involved in the New Frontiers list. There is value in having that strategy determined through the decadal process. And just opening it up is, in a way, just kind of letting that strategy be decided either by, the proposing institutions or review, whatever panel, review panel makeup is there. So we recognize that, there are issues with things being added in late, and a formal process for doing that would probably be better. But keeping those as part of the decadal survey process, and all of the thought and work that goes into that is important.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I was very pleased that CAPS devoted some significant time and a lot of debate and discussion about the mission list, because I think we're always helped when that debate and discussion occurs. And for me, I always try to balance giving all of you the most flexibility you have to exert your creativity versus some of the limitations that, like I said, New Frontiers is the biggest competitive opportunity has. And that's one of the reasons that I welcome going to AGS to hear from all of you directly. I welcome you to send in white papers when we announce what the process is that we're going to use to structure the debate on the mission list. I hope you all participate in that as well. The key theme here being, I want you all to participate. One of the reasons the AGs are great is because it enables that participation, because in the past, I think as a broad community, we were too reliant on others to look out for us and to work to give us what we wanted. And the AGs are a great venue for working toward that goal, for taking charge of your own destiny.
Bill Bodke, Southwest Research Institute. I want to bring up an unspoken issue, but I've heard it so many times in the hallways or at beers or anything else. I think it needs to be discussed and get an official statement from someone like you or Lori and the rest. Okay, is that it is a common perception is that we're doing all these New Frontier concept studies, missions, and the rest, but they will not happen because it's going to happen through the human program. And so why worry about it? Because really the funding is going to come from this other side. All these missions will be done on the other side. So we're wasting our time. I'd like you to address that issue. And this is something I've heard again and again.
I have the luxury of just focusing on my program, and my program doesn't care. I'm here to fly New Frontiers missions. Lori might want to give a more nuanced answer.
I support what Kurt said. I'd really like to know where that is coming from. It's certainly not coming from Planetary Science Division at headquarters, where again, the science is what we feel is our domain that we want to have a role in. And if there are compelling science ideas for the moon, they are as valid as any other science ideas out there. There's no one at headquarters walking around saying, well, we don't have to worry about the moon because someone else is doing it. It's very important to us. So I'm not sure where that comment is coming from. It's not coming from us.
I'll just say this. I'm not going to discuss my sources, but, but I've heard this from serious people, and some of the serious people have told me that this has come from people at NASA headquarters. So I can't say more than that.
You're talking to the woman who's in the selection meeting.
I understand. I'm just telling you what I heard. That's why I want you to address it.
Okay. If that was not enough of a definitive answer, I will try to be more definitive. That the science of the moon is compelling and of interest to Planetary Science Division within Discovery, within New Frontiers, and within Flagship Concepts. Everyone is welcome to submit those ideas. They will be considered equally with every other potential destination out there. Okay. On a science basis, right? On the science that we want to do.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Just to give you an example of that kind of thing, Bill, and going back to the mission list idea, I always find it entertaining that when I'm out in the hallway, what I hear from somebody I'm talking to is everybody thinks the list should be open. And then I go to another hallway, and what I think is everybody thinks the mission list should be closed. And then I go to another hallway, and I think everybody thinks the mission list should be shortened. So my message here is when anybody tells you that people are talking about something or that everybody thinks something, typically that means they're just talking to themselves and maybe two of their friends.
So Dean Epler, Aerospace Corporation. I've spent a considerable amount of my time career looking in the history of Apollo, and I think where some of Bill's discussion is coming from is in Apollo, SMD's way past predecessor proved to be non-responsive to the Apollo program, and all the Apollo science was funded by the Apollo program, not by SMD. I'm not saying because that's an historic precedent we should do it that way. I'm just saying that during Apollo, the Science Mission Directorate did not fund the science. So
So let me just respond to that very quickly then. I can assure you that our current Associate Administrator for Science, Thomas Zerbuchen, is absolutely 100% committed to any science done at the moon coming from SMD. He wants to see science, whether it be planetary science, heliophysics, astrophysics, or earth science, if it's being conducted from the moon, he wants Science Mission Directorate engaged. He's also, from the very beginning, from the first announcement of going forward to the moon, talked about how we will use science and human exploration together, having science enable the human exploration and human exploration enabling science. Very definitely looking to see science coming from within the Science Mission Directorate. And you've seen so far already, even with the funding for DALI, for the NASA-provided lunar payload instruments, and the LCP, all of that funding coming from Science Mission Directorate, even for things that are technology demonstrations or helping to reduce the uncertainties in the strategic knowledge gaps. So all of that funding coming from Science Mission Directorate to support science at the moon.
Thank you, everyone.